For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council spoke of humanity in whispers, ancient myths of a species so ruthlessly effective in warfare that entire star systems would surrender at the mere mention of their name. Children across 100 worlds grew up hearing bedtime stories about the ghost fleet that could appear anywhere, strike with impossible precision, and vanish before reinforcements arrived. The Council's historians classified these tales as folklore. After all, no species could survive the Great Purge of 2847, when the Zephyrian Empire systematically glassed every human colony they could find. The official records were clear. Humanity was extinct, their homeworld Earth nothing but cosmic dust, their mighty fleets reduced to scrap metal floating in forgotten corners of space. But legends have a way of becoming terrifyingly real when you least expect them. When the Malekith Horde began their unstoppable conquest across the Outer Rim, consuming worlds and enslaving entire populations, the Council's finest military minds calculated they had 6 months before total galactic domination was complete. Their combined fleets, representing 57 member species, had already suffered devastating defeats in 12 major engagements. Then, something impossible happened. The Horde's most fortified stronghold, a moon-sized battle station, defended by 3 million warriors and protected by energy shields that had never been breached, simply vanished from sensors overnight. No distress calls, no wreckage, no survivors. Just empty space where an impregnable fortress had existed 12 hours earlier. The only clue left behind was a message burned into the surface of the nearest planet in letters visible from orbit. We remember the old ways. We remember who wronged us, and we're coming home. Now, as panic spreads through council chambers and admirals demand explanations they cannot give, long-suppressed files are being opened. Ancient warning protocols, sealed for millennia, are being dusted off. And somewhere in the deepest archives, a single line from a forgotten report makes blood run cold in the veins of those brave enough to read it. They were never just warriors. They were the storm itself, and we merely thought we had weathered it. The humans are back, and they're about to remind the galaxy why their name became legend in the first place. Admiral Zektar of the Galactic Council Defense Force stood before the massive holographic display in the war room, his forearms crossed in a gesture that would have been impossible for the extinct humans to replicate. The crimson dots representing Malekith Horde positions seemed to pulse with malevolent energy as they spread across the galactic map like a viral infection. In just 3 months, they had claimed 47 star systems, each conquest more brutal than the last. "Show me the Kepler 442 system again," Zektar commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. The display zoomed in on what should have been the Horde's most impregnable stronghold. Instead, empty space mocked them where the massive battle station had existed just 48 hours ago. Captain Lyra Voss, a member of the amphibian Aquari species, manipulated the controls with webbed fingers that trembled slightly. "Sir, we've run the sensor logs 17 times. There's no evidence of weapons fire, no debris field, no gravitational anomalies. The station was simply there one moment and gone the next." Zektar's mandibles clicked in frustration. As a member of the insectoid Krillian race, he had evolved from creatures that could detect the slightest vibrations in their environment. Every instinct he possessed screamed that something was fundamentally wrong with this scenario. Battle stations didn't simply vanish, especially ones housing 3 million of the galaxy's most feared warriors. "What about the message?" he asked, though he already knew every word burned into his memory. "The planetary surface of Kepler. 442b shows thermal scarring consistent with controlled plasma burns. The message was created with surgical precision, no collateral damage to the surrounding landscape. Whoever did this wanted us to read it clearly." Lyra paused, her gills fluttering nervously. "Sir, the energy required to burn letters that large into a planet's surface would require the focused output of an entire battle fleet. And yet, our sensors detected no fleet, no energy signatures, nothing. Zektar moved closer to the display, studying the ghostly outline where the Horde's stronghold had been. Judays, have you cross-referenced the message against our historical databases? Yes, sir. That's where things get concerning. Lyra brought up a new display showing archived files that hadn't been accessed in centuries. The linguistic patterns match ancient Earth Standard, a language that hasn't been spoken in over 3,000 years. But there's something else. She highlighted specific phrases in the message. The syntax structure, the way certain words are emphasized, it matches military communications protocols from the old human colonial navy, protocols that were classified at the highest levels and never shared with other species. A chill ran down Zektar's exoskeleton despite the war room's carefully controlled temperature. He had served in the Council's military for most of his life, and like all senior officers, he had studied the historical records of the Great Wars. The humans had been allies once, before the Zephyrian Empire's betrayal. Their tactical innovations and relentless fighting spirit had been the stuff of legend even before their supposed extinction. "That's impossible," he muttered, but even as he spoke the words, he felt their hollowness. The humans were wiped out during the Great Purge. The Zephyrians documented every destroyed colony, every orbital bombardment. Earth itself was reduced to an asteroid belt. "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Daltex, a tall, ethereal member of the crystalline Shardhai species, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Council chambers. Admiral Kessara requests your immediate presence." Zektar's blood ran cold. Admiral Kessara was the supreme military commander of the Galactic Council, a position she had held for over 4 centuries. She didn't request immediate presence for routine matters. The transit to the Council chambers took only minutes via the high-speed maglev system, but it felt like hours. As Zektar approached the massive doors of the War Council meeting hall, he could hear raised voices from within. The Council prided itself on diplomatic decorum and measured responses. The doors slid open to reveal chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were speaking simultaneously, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony that the universal translators struggled to interpret. At the center of the maelstrom stood Admiral Kessakara, her towering frame imposing even among the diverse assembly. As a member of the silicone-based Vorthax species, she resembled a living mountain of dark stone, her deep voice cutting through the noise like a seismic rumble. "Silence!" she commanded, and the room instantly fell quiet. Her glowing eyes swept across the assembly before settling on Zektar. "Admiral, report on the Kepler 442 incident." Zektar stepped forward, acutely aware that every optical sensor, compound eye, and photoreceptor in the room was focused on him. "The Malekith stronghold has been completely eliminated with no trace of the attacking force. The only evidence of hostile action is a message burned into the planetary surface using an unknown energy weapon of unprecedented power." "Read the message aloud," Kessara commanded. Zektar's mandibles clicked nervously. "We remember the old ways. We remember who wronged us. And we're coming home." The silence that followed was deafening. Then slowly, whispered conversations began to ripple through the assembly. Zektar caught fragments of translation. "It can't be. The old stories. They're supposed to be extinct." Counselor Vexney of the Ethereal Confederation floated forward, her gaseous form shimmering with agitation. "This is obviously some elaborate hoax perpetrated by the Malekith themselves. They're trying to scare us into submission by invoking old myths." "With respect, Counselor," interrupted Dr. Thane Corrigan, the lone human descendant on the Council and one of the few survivors whose ancestors had escaped the Great Purge through pure chance. "This isn't a myth we're dealing with." His voice carried a weight that made the entire assembly turn toward him. As the Council's chief historical analyst, his word carried significant authority on matters of galactic history. Corrigan activated a holographic display showing archived military records. "I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing classified files from the pre-Purge era, the tactical signature of the Kepler. 442 attack matches documented human military operations from their war against the Hegemony Coalition. Complete elimination of targets with minimal energy signatures, surgical precision, and psychological warfare through message placement. He paused, letting the implications sink in. But there's something else. 3 days ago, our deep space monitoring stations detected gravitational anomalies in 17 different systems, all along former human trade routes. The patterns suggest massive objects moving through hyperspace, but nothing appeared on our sensors. Admiral Kesara's stone features somehow managed to convey concern. Are you suggesting that humans have survived in secret for 3 millennia? I'm suggesting that our assumptions about their extinction may have been premature, Corrigan replied. Zephyrians claim they destroyed all human colonies, but their records show gaps. Entire sectors that were marked as sterilized without detailed bombardment logs. At the time, the Council accepted their word without independent verification. Counselor Vexney's form flickered with what might have been indignation. This is preposterous. You're asking us to believe that an entire species has been hiding in the depths of space for thousands of years, building fleets capable of destroying Malekith's strongholds, all while maintaining perfect operational security? Actually, interjected another voice, that's exactly what I'm asking you to believe. Every head in the chamber turned toward the speaker, a figure that materialized near the center of the room as if stepping out of empty air itself. The being was clearly human in appearance, though enhanced in ways that made the assembly's collective breath catch. Standing roughly 2 meters tall, the figure wore what appeared to be a form-fitting suit that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Most unsettling were the eyes, completely black, as if they had been replaced with voids in space itself. I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Remnant Fleet, the figure announced in perfect galactic standard, though with an accent that carried the weight of millennia. I speak for those who remember. The chamber erupted in pandemonium. Security forces reached for weapons that suddenly felt inadequate, while council members demanded explanations for how their supposedly impregnable chambers had been breached. Through it all, Commander Chen stood perfectly still, as if the chaos around her was merely an interesting academic exercise. Admiral Kesara's voice cut through the noise like a plasma cutter. How did you get in here? This facility is protected by quantum shields and monitored by the most advanced sensor arrays in the galaxy. Chen's expression might have been a smile, though it carried no warmth. The same way we've been moving through your space for the past 1,000 years, Admiral. You've forgotten that we wrote the book on stealth technology. Literally. Your own cloaking systems are based on designs we shared with the Council during the Alliance years. She gestured and suddenly the chamber's displays activated without any apparent interface. Images appeared showing massive ships moving through space, vessels that seemed to bend light around themselves, visible only as distortions against the stars. The design aesthetic was unmistakably human, but evolved far beyond anything in the historical records. For 3,000 years, we've watched from the shadows, Chen continued, her voice carrying across the stunned assembly. We've seen species rise and fall, empires expand and collapse. We've studied your technologies, learned your languages, mapped your territories. And we've waited, Dr. Corrigan found his voice first. Waited for what? For the galaxy to remember what happens when you corner a species known for never giving up. Chen's black eyes seemed to focus on each council member in turn. Teddy, the Malekith horde represents everything we once fought against. Conquest for its own sake, the subjugation of peaceful worlds, the extinction of entire cultures. When we learned they were moving toward former human territories, we decided it was time to emerge from the darkness. Counselor Vexney's gaseous form swirled agitatedly. You speak of former human territories as if you still have a claim to them. Those worlds have been settled by other species for millennia. And we have no intention of displacing them, Chen replied calmly. We're not here for conquest, Counselor. We're here because someone needs to stop the horde, and you've proven unable to do so despite your combined fleets and resources. The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. It was true. The Council's forces had suffered defeat after defeat against the Malekith advance. Entire fleets had been destroyed, and every tactical analysis suggested complete galactic domination was inevitable within 6 months. Admiral Cassara leaned forward, her massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "What are you proposing?" "A temporary alliance," Chen said. "We help you destroy the Malekith horde, and in return, the Council acknowledges our right to exist as a sovereign entity within the galactic community. No territorial demands, no reparations for the losses we suffered during the Purge. Just recognition and the guarantee that this time, when peace comes, it will last." The proposal sparked immediate debate among the Council members. Some argued that trusting the humans was impossible after their mysterious 3,000-year absence. Others pointed out that they were facing extinction at the hands of the Horde and couldn't afford to reject any potential ally. Dr. Corrigan raised his hand for attention. "Commander Chen, may I ask how many of you survived the Purge?" For the first time, Chen's composed expression flickered with something that might have been pain. "Enough," she said simply. "We learned to hide in places where others couldn't follow. Deep space, rogue planets, the interstellar void itself. We adapted. We survived, and we've been preparing for this moment ever since." Admiral Zektar, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. "The Kepler 442 stronghold housed 3 million Malekith warriors behind shields that had never been breached. How did you eliminate it so completely?" Chen's expression returned to its previous neutrality. "We didn't eliminate it, Admiral. We relocated it." "Relocated?" Kessera's stone features somehow managed to convey confusion. "The station exists exactly where it always did," Chen explained. "We simply moved it approximately 14 billion kilometers away from its original position. The Malekith are now orbiting their target planet's sun at a distance that provides them with an excellent view of stellar activity. I'm told the solar radiation is quite spectacular just before it becomes lethal." The casual way she described the fate of 3 million beings sent chills through the assembly. This was the human military efficiency that legends were built upon. Devastating effectiveness delivered with clinical precision. Counselor Vexney's form flickered with what might have been fear. "You're talking about technology beyond anything in our current understanding. Spatial displacement on that scale should be impossible." "Should be, yes," Chen agreed. "But we've had 3,000 years to push the boundaries of possibility. When your entire species is driven to the edge of extinction, you develop a remarkable talent for achieving the impossible." Admiral Cassara stood to her full, imposing height. "We need time to consider this proposal." "Of course," Chen replied, "but don't take too long. Our intelligence suggests the Horde is planning a major offensive against the Centauri cluster within 72 hours. 12 billion souls live in that system, Admiral. I'd hate for them to become another statistic in the Malekith expansion." With that, Commander Chen simply faded from view, leaving no trace that she had ever been present except for the lingering sense that the galaxy had fundamentally changed in the space of a single conversation. As the Council members began heated discussions about the implications of humanity's return, Admiral Zektar stared at the space where Chen had vanished and felt the weight of history pressing down on his exoskeleton. The humans were back, and everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare was about to change. The legends were becoming reality, and reality, it seemed, was far more terrifying than any myth. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in progress for 18 hours, and tempers were beginning to fray across species lines. Admiral Zektar observed the proceedings from his position near the tactical displays, watching as representatives who normally conducted business with diplomatic precision now argued with the intensity of beings facing existential threats. "The proposal is madness," declared Ambassador Krexith of the Hegemony Coalition, his crystalline body structure resonating with harmonic vibrations that the universal translators rendered as barely controlled fury. We're being asked to trust a species that has demonstrated the ability to move battle stations across interstellar distances and infiltrate our most secure facilities at will. How do we know this isn't some elaborate human plot to position themselves as galactic saviors before revealing their true conquest agenda? Dr. Thane Corrigan, still the only human descendant present, stood slowly from his position at the research console. With respect, Ambassador, your own species was among those that originally allied with humanity against the Malekith precursor civilizations 4,000 years ago. The historical records show that humans never once broke a military alliance or betrayed their partners, even when doing so would have provided strategic advantages. Ancient history, Krexoth replied, his harmonics shifting to what sounded almost like electronic scoffing. These are not the same humans who fought beside our ancestors. These are beings who have spent millennia in the dark between stars, developing technologies we cannot comprehend and nursing grudges we cannot measure. Admiral Kessera's massive form shifted slightly, sending subtle vibrations through the chamber floor. The question before us is not whether we trust them, but whether we can afford to reject their assistance. Our latest intelligence reports show Malekith forces massing for what appears to be their final offensive. 17 core worlds, including 3 species homeworlds, lie directly in their projected path. She activated the central holographic display, showing the galaxy with Malekith positions marked in angry red. The pattern was unmistakable. A coordinated assault designed to break the Council's remaining defensive capabilities in a single devastating blow. Our combined fleets number approximately 40,000 vessels, Kessi Sara continued. Intelligence estimates suggest the Horde can field at least 3 times that number, with technological superiority in most categories. Mathematical analysis indicates a less than 12% probability of successful defense using conventional tactics. The sobering statistics settled over the chamber like a burial shroud. Even species that had been arguing against the human alliance proposal seemed to deflate slightly as the raw numbers confirmed what many had already suspected. They were facing a war they could not win alone. Counselor Vexney's gaseous form swirled with agitation. But what guarantee do we have that these humans can deliver on their promises? They claim to have eliminated the Kepler 442 stronghold, but we have only their word and a cryptic message burned into a planet's surface. For all we know, the Malekith staged their own base's disappearance as part of some larger psychological warfare strategy. Actually, interrupted a new voice, you have considerably more evidence than that. Every being in the chamber turned toward the speaker. Commander Chen had returned, once again materializing without triggering any security alerts or sensor warnings. This time, however, she was not alone. 2 additional figures stood beside her, both clearly human but bearing subtle differences that spoke of genetic adaptation and technological enhancement. Commander Chen, Admiral Kesisara said, her stone features managing to convey both wariness and curiosity. I wasn't aware you had returned. I never left, Chen replied with that same unsettling smile. We've been monitoring your deliberations. I'm afraid the timeline has accelerated beyond our initial projections, she gestured, and the chamber's displays activated to show real-time sensor feeds from deep space monitoring stations. What they revealed sent waves of shock through the assembly, massive formations of Malekith vessels moving at unprecedented speeds toward Council space, their formations so large they registered as gravitational anomalies on long-range sensors. The Horde has accelerated their final offensive by 68 hours, Chen announced. Our estimates suggest they will reach the outer defensive perimeter in approximately 42 hours. The Centauri cluster will come under direct assault in less than 3 standard days. Dr. Trest Corrigan leaned forward in his chair, studying the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had spent decades analyzing military movements. These formation patterns, I've never seen anything like this. The coordination required to move fleets this size across multiple star systems simultaneously should be impossible without communication delays causing tactical chaos. The Malekith have evolved beyond our previous understanding, Chen replied. They've developed what appears to be instantaneous quantum entanglement communication across any distance. Each ship in their fleet can coordinate with every other ship in real time, regardless of physical separation. It makes them effectively one massive organism spanning multiple star systems. The implication sent chills through the assembly. Coordinated fleet actions across interstellar distances represented a level of tactical sophistication that could overwhelm even the most carefully planned defenses. Ambassador Krexathut's crystalline structure resonated with what sounded like electronic despair. If they possess such coordination capabilities, how can any force hope to stand against them? Chen's expression remained neutral, but something in her black eyes seemed almost predatory. Because coordination also creates vulnerabilities. When every ship in a fleet shares information instantaneously, disrupting that communication network can cause cascade failures across entire armadas. And we happen to be experts in electronic warfare. She introduced her companions with a gesture. Colonel Marcus Webb, our fleet tactical coordinator, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, our technology integration specialist. They're here to provide specific details about our capabilities and how they can be integrated with your existing forces. Colonel Webb stepped forward, his appearance marking him as clearly military, despite the 3 millennia gap. His bearing spoke of command experience, while subtle cybernetic implants around his eyes suggested enhanced tactical awareness. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of various classifications, he began with a slight smile. Let me be direct about our situation. The Malekith Horde represents an extinction-level threat to every sentient species in this galaxy. They don't conquer territories. They consume them entirely, converting everything from planetary resources to population centers into components for their war machine. He activated a secondary display showing detailed scans of Malekith-occupied worlds. The images were horrifying. Entire planets stripped of vegetation, oceans drained, and populations reduced to barely surviving remnants forced into resource extraction. This is what awaits every world in the galaxy if they're not stopped. The question isn't whether you can trust us. The question is whether you can afford not to. Dr. Vasquez moved to the technical console, her fingers dancing across interfaces that seemed to respond to her touch in ways that defied current understanding of Council technology. Our fleets have been designed specifically for warfare against overwhelming odds, she announced, bringing up tactical schematics that made several Council members gasp audibly. The ships displayed were unlike anything in current galactic design philosophy. They seemed to bend space around themselves, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. More unsettling were the weapon systems, devices that appeared to manipulate fundamental forces rather than simply projecting energy or launching projectiles. These are our Phantom-class interdictors, Vasquez explained, highlighting specific systems within the ship designs. They can manipulate spacetime to create localized gravity wells, effectively trapping enemy fleets in predetermined locations. Combined with our dimensional displacement weapons, we can engage multiple enemy formations simultaneously across vast distances. Admiral Zektar found his voice despite the overwhelming nature of the revelations. How many ships can you field? Our active fleet consists of approximately 8,000 vessels, Webb replied. However, our tactical doctrine emphasizes force multiplication through technology rather than numerical superiority. Each of our ships can engage multiple enemy vessels simultaneously while remaining effectively invisible to conventional sensors. The numbers seemed impossibly small compared to the Malekith forces, but the technology being described suggested capabilities far beyond conventional understanding. Counselor Vexnee's gaseous form flickered with what might have been hope mixed with skepticism. You're asking us to stake the survival of our civilizations on 8,000 ships against 300,000 Malekith vessels, she said. Chen's expression remained impassive. We're asking you to provide us with detailed intelligence about Malekith fleet compositions, communication protocols, and tactical preferences. In return, we'll demonstrate why numerical superiority becomes irrelevant when your enemy can't find you to fight back. She gestured to the tactical display, which suddenly showed a real-time view of the approaching Malekith formations. In approximately 6 hours, a Horde scouting force of 200 vessels will reach the Epsilon Eridani system. The system contains 3 inhabited worlds with a combined population of 40 million beings, defended by a Council patrol group of 12 ships. Admiral Kessera's stone features somehow conveyed grim understanding. Our forces there stand no chance. We've already issued evacuation orders, but civilian transports move too slowly. Most of those 40 million beings will be trapped when the Horde arrives. Not if you allow us to intervene, Chen said quietly. Consider it a demonstration of our capabilities. Grant us permission to operate in Council space, and we'll show you exactly what 3,000 years of preparation can accomplish. The chamber fell silent as the magnitude of the decision settled over the assembly. They were being asked to trust humanity's word based on mysterious technologies and impossible claims, while 40 million lives hung in the balance as a test case. Dr. Corrigan stood slowly, his face bearing the weight of representing the last remnants of his ancestral species. The historical records show that humans never abandoned their allies, even when facing certain destruction. If these are truly our people, that principle should still hold true. Admiral Zektar studied the tactical displays showing the approaching Malekith forces. Military logic suggested that 12 Council ships against 200 enemy vessels would result in complete annihilation within minutes of engagement. But the alternative was allowing those 40 million beings to face the Horde's mercy, which historical records suggested was non-existent. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. Colonel Webb manipulated the display to show the Epsilon Eridani system in tactical detail. "We position a single Phantom-class interdictor at the system's outer edge. When the Malekith scouting force drops out of hyperspace, we demonstrate our dimensional displacement capabilities by relocating their entire formation to a predetermined location where they can be neutralized without risking civilian casualties." The simplicity of the proposal was almost more unsettling than its complexity. Moving 200 ships instantaneously across interstellar distances represented power on a scale that challenged fundamental understanding of physics. Ambassador Corexus's harmonics shifted to frequencies that sounded almost desperate. "And if this demonstration fails? If your technology proves insufficient against Malekith forces? 40 million beings die, and we've revealed our alliance with you to an enemy that is already proven capable of adapting to any threat. Then you'll be no worse off than you are right now," Chen replied with brutal honesty. "Your current defensive capabilities cannot protect those worlds anyway. We're offering you the only chance those 40 million beings have for survival." The truth of her words settled over the chamber like a heavy blanket. Every tactical analysis confirmed that conventional Council forces could not stand against the approaching Horde formations. The choice was between certain defeat using known methods or uncertain victory using impossible technologies. Admiral Kessera stood to her full imposing height, her decision carrying the weight of galactic authority. "Very well. You have permission to intervene at Epsilon Eridani. But be aware that if this is some elaborate deception or if your intervention results in greater casualties than conventional defense would have caused, the Council will consider humanity's reappearance an act of war." Chen's black eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the visible spectrum. "Understood. Colonel Webb will coordinate with your forces at Epsilon Eridani to ensure optimal positioning of Council vessels during our demonstration. Dr. Vasquez will provide technical liaisons with your fleet communications to maintain tactical awareness throughout the engagement." She paused, and for the first time since her appearance, something resembling genuine emotion flickered across her features. "Admiral, 40 million beings are about to witness something that hasn't been seen in this galaxy for 3,000 years. They're about to learn why humanity became legend." As the human delegation began coordinating with Council military representatives, Admiral Zektar found himself staring at the tactical displays showing the approaching Malekith forces. In 6 hours, they would either witness the return of humanity as a galactic power or watch 40 million beings become casualties in humanity's first failed promise in millennia. The Ghost Fleet was about to reveal itself, and the galaxy would never be the same. The bridge of the Council battleship Determination hummed with nervous energy as Admiral Zektar monitored the tactical situation from his command station. Around him, officers from 6 different species worked at their assigned positions, their various forms of communication creating a low background chorus of clicks, whistles, and harmonic resonances that the universal translators converted into a constant stream of status reports. Time to Malakath arrival, 4 hours, 17 minutes, announced Captain Lyra Voss from the sensor station, her webbed fingers dancing across controls that had been tracking the approaching enemy formation for the past 2 days. Formation consistency remains unchanged, 200 vessels in standard horde attack configuration. Zektar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he studied the tactical display. The Council forces defending Epsilon Eridani consisted of 12 ships, including his own command vessel, facing impossible odds against an enemy known for never leaving survivors. Under normal circumstances, he would have ordered immediate evacuation of all Council assets and hoped that civilian transports could escape before the system fell. But these were not normal circumstances. "Any sign of our allies?" he asked, the words still feeling strange on his tongue. 3,000 years of believing humanity extinct made their sudden reappearance feel like fiction rather than military reality. "Negative, sir," replied Lieutenant Commander Thexara, a tall, ethereal member of the photosynthetic Verdani species whose skin currently showed mottled patterns of concern. "Our sensors detect no human vessels within 3 light-years of this position. Long-range scans show only empty space beyond the system's outer edge." The absence of visible human forces was either a demonstration of their claimed stealth capabilities or evidence that the entire alliance was an elaborate hoax. Zektar had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries and had learned to prepare for every contingency. But the current situation defied conventional military planning. "Admiral," interrupted Communications Officer Daltex, her crystalline form shimmering with urgency, "we're receiving a transmission from the Evacuation Coordination Center on Epsilon Eridani Prime. Civilian transports are reporting mechanical failures at an unprecedented rate. It's as if someone is systematically disabling their faster-than-light drives." A chill ran down Zektar's exoskeleton. If the civilian evacuation was being sabotaged, it suggested either Malakath advance infiltration or human manipulation to ensure maximum civilian presence during their demonstration. Neither possibility was particularly reassuring. "Put me through to the evacuation center," he ordered. The main display activated to show the harried features of Coordinator Velnoth, a member of the multi-tentacled cephalopod species whose color-changing skin currently showed patterns of extreme stress. "Admiral, we have a crisis situation here. 17 civilian transports have suffered simultaneous drive failures, stranding approximately 2 million beings in the system. Our repair teams are reporting that the failures appear to be caused by microscopic sabotage to quantum flux regulators. Damage so precise that it had to be done by someone with expert knowledge of our propulsion systems." Before Zektar could respond, the display flickered and was replaced by a familiar face. Commander Chen appeared as clearly as if she were standing on the bridge, though sensors still showed no human vessels in the area. "Admiral," she said without preamble, "the transport failures were necessary to ensure optimal demonstration conditions. The affected vessels will be repaired automatically once our engagement with the Malakath forces is complete." The casual admission sent waves of shock through the bridge crew. Several officers reached for their weapons before remembering that Chen wasn't physically present and their enemy remained hours away. "You sabotaged civilian evacuation transports?" Zektar's voice carried the full authority of his rank and the barely controlled fury of someone witnessing a potential war crime. "There are 2 million beings trapped in this system because of your actions." Chen's expression remained infuriatingly calm. "There are 2 million beings who will witness the return of humanity to galactic affairs and live to tell others about it. Had they been allowed to evacuate, this demonstration would have been pointless. Destroying an empty system proves nothing about our ability to protect inhabited worlds. And if your demonstration fails, Lieutenant Commander Thexara demanded, her skin pattern shifting to colors that indicated combat readiness among her species. If these 2 million beings die because you prevented their escape? For the first time since her appearance, something resembling genuine emotion flickered across Chen's features. Then we'll have failed as completely as the Council's conventional forces would have. The difference is that we don't intend to fail. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew to contemplate the implications. Humanity had returned to galactic affairs by essentially taking 2 million beings hostage to prove their military capabilities. It was either supreme confidence or supreme arrogance, and the distinction would become clear within hours. "Admiral," Captain Voss announced, "we're receiving detailed tactical data from an unknown source. Fleet positioning recommendations, weapon targeting solutions, and, sir, this includes information about Malekith shield frequencies and structural vulnerabilities that we've never been able to determine." Zektar studied the incoming data stream with growing amazement. The tactical intelligence was incredibly detailed, showing weak points in Malekith armor plating, optimal attack vectors for their ship designs, and communication protocols that had never been broken by Council intelligence services. "Where is this information coming from?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. It's being transmitted directly to our tactical computers through methods our engineers can't identify." "But Admiral, if this information is accurate, it changes everything we thought we knew about Malekith capabilities." The data revealed that Malekith forces, while numerous and individually powerful, relied heavily on instantaneous coordination between vessels. Their entire tactical doctrine was built around shared awareness and simultaneous maneuvering that made their fleets function as single organisms. But the same quantum entanglement networks that enabled this coordination created vulnerabilities that could be exploited by an enemy who understood their underlying principles. "Time to Malekith arrival, 1 hour 43 minutes. Formation remains consistent. 200 vessels dropping out of hyperspace in standard attack formation." Zektar activated the fleet-wide communication system connecting with the 11 other Council ships positioned throughout the system. "All vessels, this is Admiral Zektar. We are about to witness either the most significant military development in galactic history or the most elaborate deception ever attempted. Regardless of the outcome, we are bound by duty to protect the civilian populations in this system, maintain defensive positions, and be prepared for immediate combat operations if the human intervention fails." The acknowledgments came back from his ship captains in various languages and communication methods, but the underlying message was universal. They were ready to fight and die to protect those 2 million civilian beings, regardless of how they had become trapped in the system. "Admiral," called out sensor specialist Crinidar, a member of the arachnid species whose multiple eyes could process visual information across broader spectrums than most other beings. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational disturbances at the system's edge. Something very large is manipulating space-time in ways that shouldn't be possible with known technology." The tactical display updated to show space itself seeming to bend and twist at the outer reaches of the Epsilon Eridani system. Whatever was causing the distortions wasn't visible to conventional sensors, but its effects on local gravitational fields were unmistakable. "Time to arrival, 14 minutes, Captain Voss announced, her voice tight with tension. "Malekith formation is decelerating for transition to normal space. Standard pre-attack positioning indicates they plan to eliminate system defenses before beginning planetary bombardment." Zektar found himself gripping his command station with enough force to leave indentations in the metal. Everything depended on the next few minutes. Either humanity would demonstrate capabilities that could change the course of the war, or 40 million beings would die while learning that legends were just stories after all. "All vessels, combat alert status. Weapons powered, shields at maximum. If the human demonstration fails, we engage immediately with everything we have." The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness, each second marked by increasingly detailed reports about the approaching Malekith force. 200 ships, each capable of destroying entire cities with single-weapon volleys, crewed by warriors who had never shown mercy to conquered populations. Malekith formation dropping out of hyperspace. Now, the tactical display erupted with activity as 200 enemy vessels materialized at the system's outer edge in perfect formation. Their ships were massive, dark constructions that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, bristling with weapon systems that could reduce planets to slag. As expected, they immediately began accelerating toward the inner system where Council forces waited. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. The Malekith force continued its approach, communications channels filled with their harsh, guttural language as they coordinated their attack. Sensors showed their weapons charging, shields activating, and targeting systems locking onto Council vessel positions. Then, space itself seemed to twist. What happened next would be analyzed by military historians for centuries, though none would ever fully understand the technology involved. The 200 Malekith vessels simply weren't where they had been anymore. Between one sensor sweep and the next, the entire enemy formation vanished from the system's outer edge and reappeared in a tight cluster approximately 100,000 kilometers from the system's primary star. "By the ancient stars," whispered Captain Voss, her voice barely audible over the bridge's suddenly silent atmosphere. "They've been relocated." The entire fleet was moved instantaneously across millions of kilometers. But the demonstration wasn't finished. As the Malekith vessels began to recover from their unexpected displacement, space around them began to change again. This time, instead of transportation, the effect was more subtle but infinitely more terrifying. "Admiral," reported sensor specialist Krindar, his multiple eyes widening in patterns that indicated disbelief, "the gravitational fields around the Malekith formation are intensifying. Local space-time is being compressed at an exponential rate." The tactical display showed what was happening with crystalline clarity. Space around the enemy fleet was contracting, creating an artificial gravity well so intense that the Malekith vessels were being drawn together despite their engines' desperate attempts to escape. Within minutes, 200 massive warships had been compressed into a sphere less than 10 kilometers in diameter, their hulls crushing against each other under gravitational forces that exceeded those found near stellar cores. The entire engagement lasted less than 4 minutes. 200 Malekith vessels representing enough firepower to sterilize entire worlds had been eliminated without firing a single shot. As the artificial gravity well dissipated, leaving only twisted debris where the enemy fleet had existed, a new voice filled the Council ship's communication systems. It was unmistakably human, speaking an accented geolactic standard with undertones that suggested vast experience with warfare. "This is Captain Sarah Martinez of the human remnant ship Retribution. Malekith's scouting force has been neutralized with 0 Council casualties and 0 civilian harm. We are transmitting detailed tactical recordings to all Council vessels for analysis and distribution to your military command structures." The recordings that followed would revolutionize galactic understanding of warfare. They showed how humanity had developed weapons that could manipulate fundamental forces, transportation systems that could move objects instantaneously across interstellar distances, and stealth technology so advanced that entire fleets could operate invisibly within sensor range of enemy forces. Admiral Zektar found his voice after several minutes of stunned silence. "Captain Martinez, on behalf of the Galactic Council Defense Force, I acknowledge the effectiveness of your demonstration. The Epsilon Eridani system is secure, and civilian populations are safe." "Roger that, Admiral. We're transmitting repair instructions for the civilian transports we temporarily disabled. All vessels will be operational within the hour and no permanent damage was caused to their systems." The admission that humanity had sabotaged the civilian evacuation as part of their demonstration plan would create diplomatic complications for months to come, but the results were undeniable. 40 million beings were alive who would have been dead under conventional defensive strategies. As repair teams began working on the civilian transports and Council forces stood down from combat alert, Admiral Zektar contemplated the implications of what he had witnessed. Humanity had not merely survived their supposed extinction, they had evolved into something far beyond what they had been 3 millennia ago. The Ghost Fleet was real, and it had just announced its presence to the galaxy in terms that no one could ignore or misinterpret. The war against the Malekith horde had fundamentally changed, and every tactical doctrine in existence would need to be reconsidered in light of human capabilities. But perhaps most importantly, 40 million beings were going home to their families that night, and each of them would carry the story of humanity's return for the rest of their lives. The legend was becoming reality, one impossible victory at a time. The War Room, aboard the Galactic Council flagship Concordia, had been transformed into something resembling organized chaos, with tactical displays covering every available surface, and representatives from 17 different species working around the clock to coordinate the largest military operation in recorded galactic history. Admiral Zektar stood at the Central Command Station, studying intelligence reports that would have been considered science fiction just weeks earlier. "The Malekith response has exceeded all projections," announced Dr. Ayurveda. Thane Corrigan, his face showing the strain of analyzing enemy movements that defied conventional understanding. "After the Epsilon Eridani demonstration, they've withdrawn forces from 43 star systems and are consolidating their entire fleet into a single massive formation. Our estimates suggest they're preparing to field over 400,000 vessels in coordinated assault." Admiral Kassara's massive stone features somehow managed to convey grim satisfaction. "Fear makes even the Malekith cautious. They've realized they're facing an enemy whose capabilities exceed their understanding." The human demonstration had indeed sent shockwaves through both Allied and enemy forces. Within hours of the Epsilon Eridani engagement, Malekith communication networks had been flooded with reports about entire fleets vanishing without trace. The psychological impact was exactly what Commander Chen had intended. An enemy that had never experienced fear was now facing an unknown force that could eliminate their strongest formations without apparent effort. However, Dr. Corrigan continued, highlighting specific areas on the tactical display. Their consolidation strategy creates opportunities. Intelligence suggests they're gathering their forces in the Vega Nexus, a region of space that naturally limits hyperspace exit points. If we can coordinate properly, it becomes the perfect location for a decisive engagement. Captain Lyra Voss looked up from her sensor analysis station, her amphibian features showing patterns of concern. Sir, the scale of what we're discussing, 400,000 Malekith vessels, represents the largest military concentration in galactic history. Even with human assistance, our combined forces number less than 50,000 ships. The mathematics were sobering. Despite the technological advantages humanity had demonstrated, they were still discussing odds of nearly 10 to 1 against an enemy that had proven ruthlessly effective in conventional warfare. The margin for error was essentially non-existent. "That assumes conventional tactical approaches," interrupted a familiar voice. Commander Chen materialized near the central display, though sensors still registered no human presence in the area. Her ability to appear and disappear at will had become both reassuring and unsettling to Council officers who had grown accustomed to her unexpected arrivals. "Commander," Admiral Zektar acknowledged, his mandibles clicking with what might have been relief or apprehension. "We were just discussing the tactical challenges presented by Malekith force concentration." Chen studied the displays with those unsettling black eyes, her expression revealing nothing about her thoughts on the massive enemy formation. Dispersed Malekith forces require multiple simultaneous engagements across vast distances. A concentrated enemy allows us to bring our full capabilities to bear against a single target. She gestured, and the tactical displays updated to show detailed analysis of the Vega Nexus region. The space was indeed naturally constrained by gravitational anomalies from nearby stellar objects, creating limited hyperspace exit points and forcing any large fleet to cluster within a relatively small area. Chen continued, "Dr. Vasquez, please brief the Council representatives on our operational capabilities." Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared beside Chen, her scientific demeanor providing a stark contrast to the military bearing of her colleagues. Council forces, we've spent the past 2 weeks analyzing the tactical data from Epsilon Eridani and adapting our technologies for larger-scale operations. What you witnessed there was a demonstration using approximately 0.01% of our fleet's total capabilities. The casual way she described the devastating elimination of 200 enemy vessels as a minimal effort sent chills through the assembled officers. If Epsilon Eridani had been achieved with virtually no effort, what could humanity accomplish when fully committed to battle? Our primary advantage lies in dimensional manipulation technology, Vasquez explained, bringing up technical schematics that made several Council engineers gasp audibly. We can create localized distortions in space-time that allow for instantaneous transportation, gravitational field manipulation, and what we term selective reality displacement. Admiral Cassara's stone features somehow conveyed confusion. Selective reality displacement? We can choose which aspects of physical law apply to specific regions of space. Vasquez replied with the matter-of-fact tone of someone discussing basic physics. Gravity can be reversed. Electromagnetic forces can be nullified, and the strong nuclear force can be temporarily suspended. The effect allows us to disable enemy vessels without destroying them, capture intact technology for analysis, or eliminate threats while preserving valuable resources. The implications were staggering. Humanity had apparently developed the ability to rewrite fundamental constants of reality within localized areas, turning the basic laws of physics into tactical weapons. It explained how they had survived in the deep void between stars, when reality itself could be modified to suit their needs. Even the harshest environments became habitable. Dr. Corrigan leaned forward in his chair, his scientific curiosity overcoming diplomatic protocols. How is such technology possible? The energy requirements alone should exceed the output of entire star systems. Chen's expression might have been a smile, though it carried no warmth. 3,000 years is a long time to develop new approaches to fundamental problems. When your species faces extinction, you learn to push the boundaries of possibility until they break. Colonel Marcus Webb materialized beside his colleagues, his military bearing immediately commanding attention from the assembled officers. The tactical application is straightforward. We position our fleet at strategic points around the Vega Nexus, create dimensional barriers that prevent Malekith forces from escaping the engagement zone, then systematically neutralize their capabilities while preserving as much intact technology as possible for post-war analysis. He activated detailed tactical simulations that showed the proposed engagement from multiple perspectives. Humanity's 8,000 vessels would essentially surround the Malekith concentration and create an inescapable prison using manipulated space-time, then eliminate enemy capabilities through surgical application of reality-altering weapons. Estimated engagement duration, approximately 43 minutes, Webb announced. Projected human casualties 0. Projected Council casualties less than 5%. Assuming proper positioning during the initial phase. The confidence was either inspiring or terrifying depending on one's perspective. Admiral Zektar found himself studying the tactical projections with growing amazement and concern. If humanity could indeed accomplish what they claimed, the entire balance of galactic power would shift overnight. "What do you need from Council forces?" Admiral Cassara asked. "Coordination and positioning," Chen replied. "Our technology allows us to engage the Malekith directly, but we need your fleet's position to intercept any vessels that might escape our dimensional barriers. Think of it as a hunting expedition. We'll drive the prey toward your positions." The casual way she described the elimination of 400,000 enemy vessels as a hunting expedition sent waves of unease through the assembled officers. This level of technological superiority suggested that humanity could reshape galactic affairs according to their preferences with or without Council cooperation. "There's something else we need to discuss," Chen continued, her expression becoming more serious. "The Malekith Horde is not the ultimate threat facing this galaxy. Our long-term surveillance has identified the presence of entities that make the Horde look like a minor inconvenience." The statement hit the war room like a physical blow. After weeks of desperate planning to survive against what everyone had considered an extinction-level threat, the revelation that something worse existed beyond current awareness was almost incomprehensible. Dr. Corrigan found his voice first. What kind of entities? Beings from outside our local galactic group, Chen replied. What you might term extragalactic invaders, though that description doesn't adequately convey the scope of the threat they represent. They consume entire galaxies by converting all matter and energy into components for their expansion across the universal matrix. She activated displays showing long-range sensor data from probes positioned far beyond the galactic rim. The images revealed structures so massive they registered as gravitational anomalies, constructions that spanned light years and appeared to be moving through intergalactic space toward their location. Our projection suggests they will reach this galaxy's outer edge in approximately 800 years, Chen continued. The Malekith Horde represents a test case for our defensive capabilities against lesser threats. If we cannot coordinate effectively against conventional forces, we have no hope of survival against entities that treat entire galaxies as resources to be harvested. The revelation recontextualized everything. Humanity's return wasn't just about stopping the current threat, it was about preparing for a war that would determine whether their galaxy would continue to exist at all. Admiral Zektar's mandibles clicked as he processed the implications. You're saying that this entire conflict is preparation? Training, Chen corrected. The technologies we've developed, the coordination protocols we're establishing with Council forces, the tactical doctrines being refined through combat, all of it is preparation for a threat that will make the Malekith look like a minor patrol action. Colonel Webb stepped forward, his expression carrying the weight of someone who had seen the true scope of what was coming. The good news is that humanity has had 3,000 years to prepare for this eventuality. The concerning news is that preparation time is now over. We need to forge working alliances with every species in this galaxy, develop coordinated response capabilities, and advance defensive technologies to levels that currently seem impossible. The war room fell silent as the assembled officers contemplated fighting not just for their individual species' survival, but for the continued existence of their entire galaxy. The scale of what they were discussing exceeded the scope of any previous conflict in recorded history. The immediate priority remains eliminating the Malekith threat, Chen announced. But understand that this victory, when it comes, will mark the beginning of our preparation for a much larger war. The galaxy must unite not just for this battle, but for the survival of everything we consider reality. As human representatives began coordinating with Council officers for the assault on the Vega Nexus, Admiral Zektar found himself staring at the displays showing extragalactic threats still centuries away. Humanity had returned to save them from the Malekith, but in doing so, they had revealed that salvation was only the first step toward an even more desperate struggle. The legends were becoming reality, but reality, it seemed, was far more complex and dangerous than any myth had ever suggested. The Ghost Fleet was about to prove its capabilities against impossible odds, and everyone hoped those capabilities would be sufficient for the challenges that lay ahead. The assembled fleet that gathered at the edge of the Vega Nexus represented the largest military coalition in galactic history. 47,000 Council vessels from 63 different species maintained precise formations, alongside 8,000 human ships that seemed to bend light around themselves, creating visual distortions that challenged the mind's ability to process what it was seeing. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of the Determination, studying tactical displays that showed the most ambitious military operation ever attempted. The Malekith Horde had indeed concentrated their forces as predicted. Over 400,000 vessels clustered within the gravitationally constrained region of space, their dark hulls creating a shadow against the stars that seemed to absorb hope itself. "Final system checks complete," announced Captain Lyra Voss, her amphibian features showing patterns that indicated both excitement and terror. "All Council vessels report ready status. Human fleet coordination is... Sir, I'm not entirely sure how to describe what our sensors are detecting." The human ships had begun moving in patterns that seemed to violate basic principles of physics. They phased in and out of visible spectrum, created gravitational disturbances without apparent propulsion systems, and maintained formation coordination across distances that should have made instantaneous communication impossible. Commander Chen, Admiral Zektar spoke into the communication system. Council forces are in position and await your signal to begin the operation. Acknowledged, Admiral, came Chen's voice, though she seemed to be speaking from multiple locations simultaneously. Dimensional barriers are being established around the engagement zone. All vessels should be aware that normal space-time will be significantly altered within the combat area. Your navigational systems may experience temporary confusion as local physics are modified for tactical advantage. Dr. Thane Corrigan looked up from his analysis station, his face showing the expression of someone witnessing concepts that challenged his fundamental understanding of reality. Admiral, sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the human fleet. Whatever they're preparing to do requires power outputs that exceed theoretical maximums for matter-antimatter reactions. Before Admiral Zektar could respond, space itself began to change around the Malekith concentration. The effect was subtle at first. Stars seemed to shift position slightly, and distance measurements became inconsistent. Then reality began to alter in ways that defied description. Dimensional barriers activated, announced Colonel Webb's voice across fleet communications. Malekith forces are now contained within a localized space-time distortion. Escape through hyperspace has been rendered impossible, and conventional propulsion will be severely limited. The tactical displays updated to show the prison humanity had created around their enemies. 400,000 Malekith vessels found themselves trapped within an area of space where the normal rules no longer applied. Their attempts to break free through hyperspace jumps simply returned them to their starting positions, while conventional engines responded erratically to commands that reality no longer recognized as valid. Beginning selective reality displacement, announced Dr. Vasquez's voice. Council vessels should maintain minimum safe distance of 50,000 kilometers from the engagement zone to avoid unintended effects from localized physics modifications. What happened next would be analyzed by military theorists for generations, though none would ever fully comprehend the technologies involved. Humanity began systematically disabling Malekith forces not by destroying them, but by selectively altering the physical laws that allowed their systems to function. Electromagnetic fields that powered Malekith weapons simply stopped working in localized areas around enemy ships. Gravitational effects were reversed, causing vessels to crush themselves under their own altered mass. The strong nuclear force was temporarily suspended in specific regions, causing fusion reactors to become inert while leaving organic crew members unharmed. "This is impossible," whispered sensor specialist Queenandar, his multiple eyes tracking the systematic neutralization of the enemy fleet. "They're not destroying the Malekith ships. They're convincing reality that the ships never functioned in the first place." Admiral Zektar watched in fascination and horror as 400,000 vessels were rendered completely helpless within the span of 37 minutes. No explosions, no debris fields, no casualties, just the sudden cessation of every system that made the Malekith war machine function. "Phase 1 complete," announced Commander Chen. "All enemy vessels have been neutralized with zero permanent damage to hull structures or crew quarters. We are now beginning selective technology extraction for post-conflict analysis." The human ships moved through the disabled Malekith fleet like surgeons, using their reality manipulation capabilities to extract specific technological components without damaging surrounding systems. It was precision beyond anything previously considered possible. The ability to reach inside enemy vessels and remove desired items, while leaving everything else untouched. "Admiral," Captain Voss called out, "we're receiving communications from Malekith vessels. They're requesting surrender terms?" The concept was almost incomprehensible. The Malekith horde had never surrendered to any enemy, had never shown mercy to conquered populations, and had built their entire culture around the principle that defeat was preferable to submission. Yet they were now requesting terms from an enemy whose capabilities exceeded their understanding. "Put them through," Admiral Zektar ordered. The main display activated to show a Malekith commander whose appearance reflected the warrior culture of his species. Massive frame, scarred chitin plating, and eyes that burned with barely controlled fury. But beneath the surface aggression, something else was visible. Fear. "I am War Prime Gekdar of the Malekith Horde," the being announced in their harsh, guttural language. "I speak for the assembled fleets trapped within your modifications to reality. We acknowledge defeat and request terms for the survival of our crews." The admission sent shockwaves through the Council fleet. The most feared military force in galactic history was requesting mercy from an enemy they couldn't even fight effectively. Commander Chen's image appeared on the display beside the Malekith commander, her black eyes studying the enemy leader with clinical interest. "War Prime Gekdar, I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Human Remnant Fleet. Your forces have been neutralized to demonstrate the futility of continued aggression against inhabited worlds. What assurances can you provide that the Malekith Horde will cease all hostile activities against civilian populations?" The Malekith commander's massive frame seemed to deflate slightly. "The Horde exists for conquest and expansion. To ask us to cease all hostile activities is to ask us to cease being Malekith." "Then perhaps," Chen replied calmly, "it's time for the Malekith to become something else." She activated additional displays showing detailed scans of Malekith physiology. "Our analysis indicates that your species' aggressive tendencies are largely driven by genetic modifications made thousands of years ago by entities that no longer exist. The modifications were designed to create an endless warrior class for conflicts that ended millennia ago." The revelation hit the war room like a physical shock. The Malekith Horde weren't naturally aggressive conquerors. They had been artificially programmed for warfare by extinct masters who had used them as biological weapons in ancient conflicts. "We can reverse those modifications," Chen continued. "Our biotechnology capabilities include genetic therapy that could restore your species' original psychological patterns while maintaining your physical advantages. You could retain your strength and resilience while regaining the capacity for peaceful coexistence." War Prime Gekdar's eyes widened, with something that might have been hope mixed with disbelief. "You would modify our essential nature? Transform us into something we have never been? We would restore what you were before someone else transformed you into weapons," Chen corrected. "The choice is yours, War Prime. To develop beyond warfare, or remain trapped within the dimensional barriers until entropy claims your fleets." The offer represented a level of mercy that the galactic community had never imagined possible. Rather than destroying the Malekith Horde, humanity was proposing to heal the ancient wounds that had created them as a threat in the first place. Dr. Corrigan leaned forward in his station, his scientific curiosity overriding diplomatic protocols. "Commander Chen, the genetic modifications you're describing, the precision required to reverse millennia of inherited changes while preserving beneficial traits. That level of biotechnology shouldn't be possible even with advanced civilization capabilities." Chen's expression carried that familiar hint of something that might have been amusement. "Dr. Corrigan, when your species spends 3,000 years isolated in the deep void, you develop solutions to problems that seem impossible from the perspective of conventional planetary life. Genetic therapy becomes essential for survival. When radiation exposure, gravitational variations, and environmental extremes threaten species extinction on a daily basis." The implication was staggering. Humanity hadn't just survived their forced exile. They had evolved beyond recognizable limits, developing capabilities that bordered on the miraculous. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history. A species that could manipulate reality, genetics, and fundamental forces with equal precision. War Prime Gekdar studied the displays showing genetic analysis of his own species with growing amazement. "If what you claim is possible, if the Malekith could be restored to our original nature, what would you require in return?" "Partnership," Chen replied immediately. "The extra-galactic threat I mentioned to the Council is real and approaching. When it arrives, we'll need every species in this galaxy working together for mutual survival. Your people's warrior instincts, properly channeled, could be invaluable for defensive purposes. She activated long-range sensor displays showing the approaching entities from beyond the galactic rim. The structures were even more massive than previous projections had suggested, constructions that spanned multiple star systems and appeared to be moving through intergalactic space with purpose and intelligence. The beings approaching our galaxy consume entire stellar formations for raw materials, Chen explained. They've destroyed hundreds of galaxies across the universal matrix, and they show no signs of being reasoned with or negotiated with. When they arrive, the choice will be simple: unite for survival or be harvested individually. The revelation put the entire conflict in perspective. The war against the Malekith Horde had been preparation for something far more significant: the defense of their entire galaxy against entities that treated star systems as disposable resources. Admiral Zektar found his voice after processing the implications. "Commander Chen, you're proposing to transform our most dangerous enemy into an ally for a war that won't begin for centuries. I'm proposing to heal an ancient wound that created unnecessary conflict, while building the foundation for cooperation that will be essential for long-term survival." Chen corrected, "The Malekith were never our enemies by choice. They were manufactured to be enemies by beings who used them as tools for extinct conflicts." War Prime Gektar's massive frame straightened with something resembling dignity. "If what you offer is genuine, if the Malekith can be restored to our original nature while retaining our strength, then we accept your terms. Our fleets will submit to your genetic therapy protocols and join the coalition preparing for extragalactic defense." The surrender of the Malekith Horde marked the end of the most destructive military campaign in galactic history, but more importantly, it marked the beginning of the largest cooperative effort in recorded civilization. 47 species had just watched humanity demonstrate capabilities that redefined the possible, while witnessing the transformation of implacable enemies into potential allies. As human medical teams began the complex process of reversing genetic modifications across 400,000 vessels, Admiral Zektar contemplated the future. The galaxy was entering an age unlike anything in its history. An age where cooperation between species would determine whether their civilization survived to see another millennium. The Ghost Fleet had returned not as conquerors, but as healers. The legends had become reality, and reality, it turned out, was far more hopeful than anyone had dared to imagine. Humanity was home, the Malekith were being restored to their original nature, and the galaxy was finally preparing for challenges that would require the best of every species working in harmony. The new alliance was more than military cooperation. It was the foundation for a civilization that could face any threat, overcome any challenge, and survive any catastrophe through the simple principle that unity was stronger than any individual power.